Report. I'm Bob Schieffer in New York. Good afternoon. The National Football League Commissioner Roger Goodell has spoken out for the first time about the latest developments in the Ray Rice scandal. Outrage over his handling of the matter only grew yesterday when a second, more graphic video surfaced showing the star running back brutally assaulting his then-fiancée in a hotel elevator, knocking her unconscious and then dragging her along the floor. The Baltimore Ravens fired Rice yesterday, and the NFL suspended him indefinitely. Nora O'Donnell is just back from interviewing Commissioner Goodell. It was his first interview. Nora?
That's right, Bob, and there are a number of questions for the NFL. At first, the NFL had suspended Ray Rice for 2 games. Now he has been suspended indefinitely in the wake of this second videotape. The question has come up, why didn't the NFL know about this second tape? Why didn't the NFL, who has great security resources, not know about this tape? And TMZ, a website, was able to obtain this tape. I asked Roger Goodell that very question. Did he know about this tape? Here's what he said.
To be clear, did you know that a second tape existed?
Well, we had not seen any videotape of what occurred in the elevator. We assumed that there was a video. We asked for video. We asked for anything that was pertinent, but we were never granted that opportunity.
I specifically asked the commissioner, did anyone in the NFL see this tape before Monday? He said no. He said, not to my knowledge. He said on multiple occasions they asked for this second videotape. They were aware that it existed, and they were aware that it was in the hands of law enforcement, specifically a prosecutor's office. They said that they asked on multiple occasions for that videotape. They made the point that they tried repeatedly to get that videotape, but were unable to obtain it. I also asked them why they didn't go directly to the casino to obtain that videotape. Commissioner Goodell suggested that that would have been illegal to do that. But I think, Bob, as we have more of this interview that will air tonight and tomorrow, I think you'll learn more about the thinking of the NFL behind this, what they're trying to do to address the real problem of domestic violence. About almost half of the arrests, violent criminal arrests in the NFL, are due to domestic violence, and some of the real actions the NFL is taking. And Commissioner Goodell answers the question about whether he believes his job is on the line.
All right. Well, that's a scoop, Nora. Thank you so much.
Start of a new school year could be helping a virus spread among students. A dozen states, from Colorado to Alabama, report a rise in cases of an unusual respiratory illness. Dean Reynolds is in Chicago, where the outbreak is sending lots of kids to the ICU. Dean, good morning.
Good morning. Well, it's called enterovirus 68, and it is a rare and dangerous relative of the common cold. Several states have confirmed cases now, and it is spreading rapidly among children.
Okay, here we go.
At the Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago, beds are filling up faster than they can be emptied.
We have more patients than we've had in a while, and it's not stopping.
Not stopping because of a rare form of the common cold that's anything but common. The virus, known as enterovirus 68, primarily affects the respiratory tract of young children, like River Johnson's, whose mother brought him to the emergency room here Sunday.
It felt as if somebody was pressing on my chest.
You just couldn't get a breath?
No.
Doctors warn that children with pre-existing conditions like asthma are more at risk.
In kids, their airways are so much smaller that a little bit of inflammation in there can really trigger a lot more trouble breathing.
The CDC says hospitals in Kansas City and Chicago first reported spikes in the number of children with severe respiratory problems in August. Since then, enterovirus clusters have cropped up in a dozen states across the Midwest and South.
Children attending school is probably part of the factor of why we see an increase at this time of year.
At Children's Hospital in Colorado, where 447 kids visited the emergency department in just 3 days, doctors say resources are taxed, but insist they're prepared for outbreaks like these.
You go up, and then it goes down, and then it goes away, and we'll be ready and set for influenza when it starts sometime in the season.
Now, enterovirus takes about a week to run its course, and so far there have been no reported fatalities connected to it. Charlie?
President Obama briefs congressional leaders this afternoon on his plans to take on ISIS. The president says an expanded offensive against the terror group will not use American ground troops. He will outline a broader plan relying on allies in the region. The president consulted with foreign affairs experts last night. He'll describe his plan in a speech to the country tomorrow. Fourth American infected with Ebola in West Africa arrived in the United States this morning. Emory University Hospital in Atlanta has not released any information about the person, but a World Health Organization doctor has tested positive for the disease. According to the State Department, that doctor is from the United States. Last month, Emory successfully treated 2 U.S. aid workers who contracted Ebola, a third patient being treated in Omaha, Nebraska. He was infected in Liberia. WHO predicts that country could see thousands of new infections. Thanks. A fourth American infected with Ebola in West Africa arrived in the United States this morning. Emory University Hospital in Atlanta has not released any information about the person, but a World Health Organization doctor has tested positive for the disease. According to the State Department, that doctor is from the United States. Last month, Emory successfully treated 2 U.S. aid workers who contracted Ebola, a third patient being treated in Omaha, Nebraska. He was infected in Liberia. The WHO predicts that country could see thousands of new infections in the coming weeks.
This morning, the FBI wants to know if an attack on a U.S. Air Marshal is Ebola-related. He was stabbed with a syringe at an airport in Nigeria before boarding a United Airlines flight to Houston. The Marshal was put in quarantine Monday after he landed in Texas. Jeff Pegues is in Washington with a look at the possible motive. Jeff, good morning.
Good morning. According to the Transportation Security Administration, the attack happened Sunday before the Air Marshal boarded United Flight 143 to Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport. The Air Marshal was at the airport in Lagos, one of Nigeria's biggest cities, when someone approached him in what's being described as a non-secure area. The Air Marshal was then stabbed in or near his arm with a syringe containing an unknown substance. It is not yet clear if that substance was injected into the Air Marshal. The FBI says it is investigating the incident and that this Air Marshal, who was in plain clothes, could have been attacked because he was an American. The FBI says that right now there are no apparent links to terrorism and that the agency is treating it as a criminal matter. Nigeria is one of several West African countries that have been affected by the devastating Ebola virus, and so as a precaution, the Centers for Disease Control screened the victim as soon as he landed in Houston. The CDC says he is not showing signs of illness this morning, and so far testing has indicated that whatever may have been in that syringe was not a danger to other passengers on board that plane. Charlie?
Jeff.
An Iowa man angry about his property taxes opened fire at a weekly public meeting in Maquoketa, Iowa, Tuesday. 71-year-old Francis Glaser had become agitated and vocal about his property taxes going up. Officials said he then pulled out a gun from his briefcase and pointed it at County Assessor Deb Lane.
He had a briefcase and he pulled out a handgun, and as the assessor was leaving the supervisor's office, one shot was fired.
Glaser missed the shot. One of the county's 3 supervisors stepped in and took Glaser down. That's when his second shot was fired.
And while they were holding him down, a second shot was discharged, at that time believing to kill the subject.
The county supervisor who intervened was treated for cuts on his arm. Glaser was a former Maquoketa city manager who had been vocal over the years about his property taxes going up.
The new 30th edition of Best Colleges was just released this morning, and we've got it. You're seeing the 2015 rankings first on CBS this morning. Brian Kelly is editor of U.S. News and World Report. Good to see you again, Brian Kelly.
Hi, Kim.
This is getting to be an annual visit, and we like it. Because, listen, a lot of people are ranking the colleges and universities, but after 30 years, I'm thinking you all are the gold standard. You think that too?
Well, thank you. I'm going to agree with you on that. I appreciate that. Yeah, a lot of people want to get in the rankings game, including the President of the United States. The New York Times came out with a new ranking today of one thing or another. And I think it's great because it gives people more information. But I think we like to say we are the gold standard. It starts with U.S. News, and everybody says, okay, here's how we're not like U.S. News.
Okay, and number one again.
Yeah, number one is?
Number one is Princeton.
Okay.
The usual suspects, I have to say, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Stanford are the top 5, and they have pinged around the top 5 for quite a number of years with us.
Why is Princeton number one?
Princeton, you know, by a hair, I always look at their alumni. They're very loyal alumni. People who go to Princeton love Princeton. They give it money, they come back, they stay engaged with the school a little more than Harvard. That makes a difference. And small things matter when you get into the top of the pack on this.
We've got some famous alumni like Jeff Bezos and Eric Schmidt and others.
Sure, as do all these schools. I mean, remember, you have to remember, these are all fantastic schools. These are globally ranked schools now. The whole world wants to go to these places, and there's many more than just these top 5. I think, Gail, you say we've been doing this for 30 years. One of the changes is Princeton, Harvard, Yale, et cetera, they were at the top 30 years ago.
Yeah.
What really matters is there's a lot more schools now that matter. There's the top 20, the top 30. We've really been able to identify a much bigger pack of good quality schools.
And when it comes to liberal arts, I know the Williams people, the Williams alumnus is certainly cheering because they've got, is it 12 years they've been number one?
Interestingly, same story as Princeton, very loyal alumni. They contribute, they stay active. Amherst, terrific school. Little less probably on that front.
What criteria do you use? Do you accept bribes?
Only very large ones.
Yeah, we were complimenting you on your new car.
Yeah. I have been lobbied by some of the finest people in the world.
I bet, yeah.
But no, we do this strictly by the numbers. We survey all these colleges. We ask them 700 questions. Not to be geeky, but we have 2,500 data points. If you add it all together, it's 4 million points of data that we crunch to come up with these rankings. And it looks at things like the test scores of the kids coming in, how well the professors are paid, graduation rate, hugely important issue because a lot of schools are bringing kids in, not graduating them, which is another story and a bit of a scandal.
What are the surprises here?
Dartmouth, one of the stalwarts in the Ivy League, dropped out of the top 10. We don't know quite exactly why that is. There's been some issues up Dartmouth with...
So Dartmouth dropped to 11, so who moved in? The California Institute of Technology or Penn?
Caltech, I think, would have moved up. Yeah, right. It's a zero-sum game. If somebody's out, somebody has to be in. A lot of interesting schools coming from deeper in the pack. Northeastern University in Boston, which is a very innovative school. They do a lot with co-ops, with internships, trying to be untraditional in education. They moved up about 30 points in the last couple of years.
And Brian, I know you're a Hoya too. How did Georgetown do?
Georgetown slipped one. I tried my best. I couldn't put my thumb on the scale for this one, but they're still up there in
21.
At the top.
We'll take
number
it.
21.
Duke, Charlie, number 8. Very good.
Duke slipped a little bit too, I think, but I'm sure it's for no good reasons. They'll be back next year.
Brian Kelly, thank you so much.
Well, a report released by the Netherlands says flight MH17, which crashed in eastern Ukraine in July, was hit by high-speed objects. The report also notes that the Malaysian airliner was airworthy when it took off from Amsterdam. The plane went down as it was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur on July the 17th, killing all on board, including 193 Dutch citizens. Ukraine and the West have accused pro-Russian forces of shooting down the plane with a surface-to-air missile supplied by Moscow. But Prime Minister of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, Alexander Zakharchenko, says pro-Russian forces have no military hardware or capability to shoot down a passenger jet. Russia has blamed Ukrainian government forces for the attack. And Ukraine says 4 servicemen have been killed in clashes with pro-Russian forces since the start of a truce on Friday. The Defense Ministry's military medical department says 29 other soldiers have been injured during the ceasefire. Meanwhile, there have been reports of gunfire and shelling near the airport in the eastern city of Donetsk. Shelling was also heard in the east of the port city of Mariupol, where a woman was killed. Kiev and pro-Russian forces accuse each other of breaking the truce. The ceasefire deal was signed on Friday to end nearly 5 months of fighting in Ukraine's east. The UN says that over 3,000 people, including civilians and Ukrainian troops, have lost their lives in the conflict.
The noise was thunderous, deafening, and the smoke, it looked like a battlefield. I wouldn't wish this experience on anybody, and I hope the government will do something, whatever needs to be done to put an end to this.
I was very scared. I'm terrified about coming tomorrow because my colleagues told me that I'll have to check the trash cans. We've got 3 outside, and I'll have to check them before going inside. I'm afraid to come tomorrow.
I think some people from the police, investigators, prosecutors will have to resign. This can't go on like this. So far, Chile's investigative line hasn't had any results. And we have a serious disaster here, an attack against democracy.
Xiaomi's red rice smartphone is proving red hot. Last week, it sold 40,000 in just over 4 seconds. The Redmi 1S features a quad-core processor and an 8-megapixel camera. The price, 699 yuan. That's about $110 US. More than 5 times cheaper than Samsung's Galaxy and Apple's much-anticipated iPhone 6. The latest Redmi sales strikes the same day as the launch of Apple's newest model, the iPhone 6s, which could receive less enthusiasm here in China, where the country's biggest smartphone vendor, Xiaomi, is attempting to offer a similar quality at lower prices. The Chinese smartphone maker has been spending big on technology, but keeping other costs down. It's relied on word-of-mouth marketing and focused solely on internet sales. In less than a year, the company has grown by 240% to become the world's 5th largest smartphone maker. Xiaomi, which means small rice, now holds 14% of the world's biggest smartphone market, China, making it the #1 vendor in the country after overtaking Samsung last quarter, while Apple has dropped out of the top 5.
Xiaomi's prices suit my income better. I don't earn much. Apple is more for white-collar workers. It may have slightly better quality. I think Xiaomi's quality is good. I've been using this phone for 2 years without problems. The new Redmi is okay, but the design isn't as good as the Xiaomi 4.
I like using Apple products because the functions and designs are beautiful. They have more credibility. Chinese smartphone makers like Xiaomi may have beautiful designs and functions, but I don't think they have the same credibility. So I still do prefer Apple.
Xiaomi is cheaper. I use the 2S. I find it user-friendly. The camera is great too. Most people use Apple, but I think they're more complicated to use and expensive. I wouldn't swap to Apple.
Almost all Xiaomi's products are sold in China, but the company has global ambitions. Later this year, it plans to enter Indonesia, Mexico, Russia, Thailand and Turkey, a move that could eat into Apple's market share even further.
In Germany, politicians have expressed outrage after a group of ultra-conservative Muslims launched street patrols using what they call Sharia police. The country's interior minister responded by saying this would not be tolerated, and police say they've begun pressing charges.
Well, what we saw is this group of 11 guys in orange vests with Sharia police emblazoned upon the back. They were going around the night spots of the western city of Wuppertal. Now, they were trying to encourage nightclub goers not to listen to music or to drink alcohol. They also stopped by an arcade and told people there that they shouldn't be paying money to play games. Now, this has resulted in a media and at times political backlash. In newspapers like De Welt, they're saying that the Sharia police, there would be no tolerance for Salafists. Now, the group do include some Salafists within them. Salafism is a hot topic here in Germany. The very hard-line interpretation of Islam that they take has caused a few problems over the past, with many in the Christian communities here, the Catholic and Protestant communities amongst others, concerned about about the hardline nature of it. Now, the reaction from the political side, well, we've seen Stephen Mayer from the CSU, one of Angela Merkel's close allies, saying that they should be penalised for taking part in this. Heiko Maas, the Justice Minister, saying that they would not tolerate an alternate kind of justice. Now, the actual justice here, the police force of Germany, well, they've said that they're looking into this, and there may be, if they continue, they may be following through with criminal prosecutions against these people. There has been concerns that having a knee-jerk reaction to this could actually play into the hands of extremists. But the guy behind organising the Sharia police says, well, he's done it just to provoke a reaction, to provoke a debate on the issue of Salafism, which is, as I say, a big issue here in Germany.
Top 5. Yemeni troops have opened fire on revolutionaries and their supporters marching towards the Prime Minister's office in the capital, Sana'a. Security forces have also opened fire at ambulances carrying the injured. At least 7 people were killed and over 100 more injured in the crackdown. Anti-government activists say that the violence erupted as protesters attempted to set up a camp near the Prime Minister's office after Houthi leader Abdel Malik al-Houthi called for protests to be stepped up. Security officials say the protesters were trying to storm the cabinet building. Houthi protesters have blocked Sana'a's main thoroughfares, including the road to the airport. Over the past several weeks, they have held sit-ins at various ministries in an attempt to oust the governments. They're demanding greater representation in state institutions. Of course, Yusuf Mauri joins us from Yemen's capital, Sana'a, to tell us more about what has occurred. Well, Yusuf, according to our reports, it says that protesters had attempted to set up a camp near the Prime Minister's office. Is that what set off the ensuing violence?
Well, let's not forget, the Houthis have, for the past week and a half, ever since they announced the escalation of revolutionary activities, ever since they declared the third phase of the revolution, they've been setting up sit-ins on a daily basis in front of government buildings. However, they never in any way, shape, or form ever attempt to transgress against the security forces or, to that extent, attempt to storm government building. This is the head ministry building, which is close to the Liberation Square of the Houthis, where their anti-government activities are launched on a daily basis. Today, the protests launched at 9 o'clock in the morning and made their way, as they do in, just as they do in other demonstrations, they made their way to the cabinet building, and that's where the altercation basically took place. The Houthis, as I mentioned, this is the same area where they have been waging their sit-in throughout the past week and a half. And today, as we have seen, security forces, they got orders from a hierarchy to start opening fire, which led to the deaths of the 7 people and the injury of over 100. There's also reports in the past 2 hours that the security forces once again opened fire on Houthi protesters in the Yemeni capital. And the sources who I spoke with, they told me that clashes in that part of the region, in that part of the capital, Sana'a, in the city of Hijaz, is still unfolding as we speak. So it seems that the Houthis, who have staged sit-ins in various areas of the capital, Sana'a, it seems that now the government forces, the government security forces, are beginning to crack down on them in an attempt to quell their popular uprising.
Very well. Thank you very much for that. Yusuf Mauri, talking to us there from Sana'a.
All our houses have been washed away by the floods. There is nothing left. We are on the road. Somebody help us.
No one came to help us. Our relatives have been stranded in the floodwater in our village. We've had nothing to eat for the past 4 days. We're very worried.